Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Fiona De Pinto and I am a watercolor artist, and on here we discuss everything watercolor. So if that is something that might interest you, click that notification bell, subscribe, leave a comment down below. And today we are going to be talking about watercolor brushes and the ones that I think you should have in your collection, and also what not to waste your money on. Watercolor brushes come in many shapes and sizes and with very different price tags. The most important thing in watercolor, the most important supply, is definitely paper. But watercolor brushes are the second most important thing. Their bristles can be softer, they can be stiffer, they can be more bendy. We have synthetic bristles, we have natural bristles, we have imitation natural, and we also have a blend where within the same brush they will use synthetic and natural bristles. I want to get something out of the way right off the bat. If you're starting out in watercolor and you're not yet sure whether this medium is for you, do not invest in watercolor brushes. Just use a pack of synthetic brushes until you understand whether you really want to dive into the exploration of this medium. So do not go wasting your money on expensive watercolor brushes. I would invest in paper. Again, as I said, that is the most important supply you will need in watercolor. Now that I've got that part out of the way, let's talk about when you really want to invest in watercolor brushes and why you should. I'll start by talking about some of my go-to brushes, and the first one is this Winsor & Newton Cotman. Cotman is a student grade version of the Winsor & Newton brand, so it's cheaper. Indeed, this brush cost me around €3, something like that. It wasn't that expensive at all, and I find it's a happy in-between place between cheap synthetic brushes and expensive brushes that are either natural or imitation natural. It holds quite a lot of water and offers control at the same time. So if you're starting out in watercolor and you're beginning to get passionate about it, this brush would be a good option. It's something that will give you a taste of more expensive brushes, but also it's not as stiff and dry and frustrating to use as some cheap synthetic brushes are. This brush is a size 8, 111, and it seems to be mostly synthetic with a few strands of marten in it. Now, I did not know when I bought it. I tried to steer away from natural bristles as much as possible, but when I was starting out in watercolor, I didn't really realize that some of them were natural bristles. I don't know why that question didn't cross my mind at the time. I think a lot of the big brands are now trying to go more towards an imitation natural version of their brushes, and I'm very happy about that, because let's talk about something else. You do need a thirsty brush in your brush collection. Excuse me for taking a brief interval in my description of watercolor brushes, but I need to announce that one of the winners of my giveaway did not turn up. So I have picked a new winner, and that is Stephanie Corral. She won the second original mini postcard and a watercolor brush. Stephanie, please send me your address at my email drawingsinadrawr@gmail.com. And now let's move on with the video. So going back to thirsty watercolor brushes, you will need at least 1 or 2 thirsty watercolor brushes in your collection. It can become extremely frustrating to work with brushes that have dry bristles and do not pick up enough of your mixture. It means that you have to interrupt the flow of your painting process several times to pick up more of your mixture, to pick up more water and more paint. Also, a thirsty watercolor brush will allow the paint to flow more evenly and smoothly on your paper and get an overall much better looking effect. going to cut to the chase and tell you that my favourite watercolour brush is Watercolour Protégé round number 6. As you can see, my first one is very worn out. I had to buy a new one. I held off for ages buying it because you can't get them here in Italy, definitely not individually. I had to get the whole set from America. It was very expensive and I only really used the number 6. So that is something that I would advise you against. Buying a whole set of watercolour brushes, you might only end up using 1 or 2. So if it's an expensive set, try find something else that is similar. I haven't been able to find a similar brush, but yeah, it is quite expensive, so you have to factor that in. This said, this watercolour brush has got so much going for it. It's synthetic, but it performs like it had natural bristles. I can work in detail and I can also work on larger areas, and it's a brush that I always reach for. The only thing that I have to say against it is that I wish I could get it individually here in Italy. And now let's have a look at the Silver Black Velvet family of brushes. For a long time, Silver Black Velvet round number 8 was my favourite brush, hands down. It has beautiful soft bristles that hold a ton of water, which means I don't have to keep dipping into my palette time and time again to pick up mixture. Also, I can do glazing with it, and I have the same problem that I have with Watercolour. If I had to buy this brush individually on Amazon, I would have to pay €31 for it, which is a lot for just one brush. I think the things might be different in America, so if you live over there, please let me know if this can be bought individually, if it costs less. I ended up having to buy the set, so yet again, that is the problem that I had because I don't really use all of the brushes in that set. But they are definitely extremely high quality. They are a mix of natural and synthetic bristles. And as you can see, I also have the square 1-inch flat brush. This is really good if you like putting down even washes of colour or if you paint large. But especially at the moment, I am not painting very large, so I don't really reach for this brush that often. I don't really need it. So unless you paint very large, it is definitely not something that I would advise you to invest your money on. I just wanted to say a few words about the piece I am painting. This is a study for a series I want to create called Lost in Oceans of Light. It just represents my search for serenity, for peace, and my decision to look towards light in life. Something that I have decided to embark upon, to invest my time and energy in, and that I will do for as long as I live. This tiny silver black velvet brush you see me using here is a number 2, and again it came in the set. You don't need to have such an expensive brush for details. You do need to have a small brush for details because it just makes things easier for you. I only use this because I had it in the pack, but you can use something else. So that is something I would not splurge on. Again here I'm using that large silver black velvet brush to create the impression of light. Half of her face is completely bathed in light and she is glowing and she is awakening. And here's a little bonus for you, the cheapest of brushes you can get. This part of the brush is a tube that you can fill with water and then you can screw the end back on and you can press water out of the tube just by squeezing it, and you can take this brush anywhere you go. This is the first brush I used when I started painting with watercolour. I still take it with me when I'm on the go because it's extremely handy. It costs a couple of euros, a couple of dollars. You can grab one anywhere. So yes, this is a brush I would advise you to buy if you're starting out in watercolour. Calligraphy brushes are something that I do not buy anymore. I got them once out of curiosity. To me, the bristles are too stiff, too dry, and even though I've seen artists create beautiful things with this brush, I just cannot get it to work for me. And on to flat brushes. You do need a flat brush in your collection, but you do not need to spend a lot of money. I bought this at my local art store and I must have spent maybe €5-6, which is more or less the same in dollars. It's a synthetic brush and it's really useful to paint strands of hair. In fact, it is my go-to brush to paint hair. And also here I'm showing you this Skoda No. 2 Rigger brush. This brush is slightly more on the expensive side, but it's also wonderful for painting hair, as you can see. And also, if you're into painting botanicals, it's really wonderful to paint stems and that kind of thing. So if that's your cup of tea, getting a rigger brush is also a good idea. But going back to square brushes, something else that I really love them for is swatching. I think the best way to swatch colours is with a flat brush. And I was testing this gold paint here because I wanted to add it to my painting. this video was useful for you. Remember that if you want to join my free live workshop next Sunday, May the 26th, you have to subscribe to my newsletter at the link in the description box. I hope to see as many of you there as possible. Bye for now, and thank you for your comments. Please leave them down below and I will reply to each and every one. See you soon. Bye.